this is our you gotta take legal action. This is. I'm sorry.
Welcome. Some Town of Colesville residents asked us to have a public meeting on gas drilling. That is the purpose of this meeting. I'm Margaret Wicks, and I'll be explaining our format for tonight's meeting. Town of Colesville residents, or our town taxpayers, will take priority. We represent them, and they live here. How many of you are from the Town of Colesville? Raise your hand. Those of you who are from the Town of Colesville, we'd like you to sit in the center here. If you're not from the Town of Colesville, just move to the side. And the reason for that is when our speakers take questions, because the Town of Colesville people have priority, since it's their meeting, they'll know very easily who's the town resident. Don't worry later, non-Town of Colesville residents. We will have two speakers tonight, Chris Berger and Bob Williams. Each speaker will have 20 minutes to speak. Our questions for speakers will take first from Town of Colesville residents. One question at a time for each resident will be allowed at first. Once every resident who wants to ask a question has had a chance, Town of Colesville residents may ask a second question. Please state your name and address before you ask your question. The question will then be repeated by our speaker so that everyone is able to hear it. Alan Pope, our Town of Colesville lawyer, will be monitoring the meeting. Once all Town of Colesville residents and/or taxpayers of the Town of Colesville are finished asking questions, the podium will be opened. The podium will be open to Town of Colesville residents who would like to speak. Residents will have 2 minutes each at the podium. We plan on ending the meeting at 9 o'clock. However, if Town of Colesville residents would like to speak at the podium and have not yet had a chance, the meeting will continue after 9. If our town residents have finished and it is before 9 o'clock, we will take questions from non-town residents. There will be no podium time for non-town residents. No battering will be allowed, no protesting, no disruptions of any kind will be tolerated. Anyone who chooses not to follow our rules will be escorted out by our enforcement officer, Brad McAvoy, and Lieutenant John Ayers and Lieutenant Mark Ayers. To recap the format, 2 speakers, 20 minutes each. Questions taken from the Town of Colesville residents, one at a time, until all Town of Colesville's questions have been answered. Town of Colesville residents will then have 2 minutes podium time. Time permitting, before 9 o'clock, out-of-time people may ask the speaker 1 question apiece. There will be no podium time for non-town residents. I want to thank you for coming, and I hope your questions will be answered to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Margaret. We can all tell that Margaret used to be a school teacher because everything that falls in line is falls in line. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
My name is Ed Morgan, I'm the town supervisor, and to my immediate right is Glenn Weaver, he's on the town board. Now before I see Steve Flag and Brad McAvoy and Mike out there also. Sitting to my right is our town attorney, Alan Pope, who has so graciously agreed to come here this evening. Alan will chair the meeting so we have a fair and forthright discussion. Chris, would you like to give your resume?
Sure. My name is Chris Berger, and I've been involved in this issue for quite some time. Starting off, I guess, with my involvement in an organization that I helped co-founded, the Binghamton Regional Sustainability Coalition. We were all about doing a lot of what we considered very positive things, and not that we were against the environment or against public health, but our focus was on economic development, but sustainable economic development. So that kind of gave us a little bit different slant on this issue. But when gas drilling came to town, we sort of all looked at each other and said, you know, if we didn't get a handle on this, we would really, none of the other stuff that we were getting involved with really mattered. So I come with that hat. I've been involved in the Environmental Management Council that actually both Bob and I served on for a good number of years. Actually, we're finding we've crossed paths quite a bit, Bob and I. We both served on the legislative task force on gas drilling. That's the Broome County Legislative Task Force. And I also co-chair the Sierra Club's statewide task force on gas drilling. And I was a former county legislator. I think I'll stop with that.
Thank you.
My name is, can you hear me? Yeah. No?
Not really.
Yes.
Better? Yeah, all right. My name is Bob Williams, and I actually live in the town of Windsor, which is just south of you. I got involved in this issue back in 2007 when our local people started forming a gas landowners coalition, and I just happened to live there. I'm in that coalition, the Windsor Landowners Coalition. I'm a very large landowner in the town of Windsor. I own just a little over 5 acres. And, so you can see I have a really vested interest in promoting this. But I got involved in it because one of the things I said to them, I've worked as an environmental consultant for over 40 years, and I've worked in 32 different states. And I've worked on nuclear power stations, I've worked on fossil fuel, I've worked on wind generation, and I've worked on gas fields and gas pipeline issues. And I got involved in the Landowners Coalition because I said, you really don't have any idea what's coming, and we actually need to be prepared for what's coming. And so we got together and we got attorneys involved in it, and we started to put together landowner leases. And I actually believe that the landowners leases for most of the landowner coalitions in New York State actually are in many ways better than some of the regulations that are coming out. They're more concise, they get to the point, they tell the gas and oil companies exactly what we got. The Windsor Landowners Coalition would never sign a company lease. This would do. It just doesn't protect us enough. It doesn't protect the environment. And that's one of the major issues behind the Landowners Coalition. Yeah, we're for promoting the natural gas drilling, but we're also for protecting the environment. That's as important as the other issue. I think this thing's not working.
I don't think.
It's not working.
It's not.
I don't know. I need it because I'm not really a loudspeaker. How about now? Any better? That's better? Okay, that's good.
Thank you, Bob. Bob, would you like to take questions now from the audience?
Now, before I go, or
Well, I'm just wondering if you're done with yours.
let me do my presentation first, and then we'll go. Okay? One of the things that Chris and I are both under the gun here, we've been restricted to 20 minutes, and initially we thought we were going to do 40 minutes. So I'm going to go through some stuff, and I'm just going to skip over some stuff, and if it comes up in the question thing, we can get to it, but we both have lots of information that probably will not be in our presentation. All right, this is the same information again as me. I'm going to skip right through this because I don't have any time. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about, they think there's no natural gas drilling going on in New York State. I only put this slide in here to tell you that there's lots of natural gas drilling going on in New York State. As many of you know, New York State was the very first gas-producing state in North America, not just in the United States, but in North America. 1821, first gas well drilled in New York State, western New York. In 2008, in 2008, there were over 500 gas wells drilled in New York State. 2009, over 350. 2010, about 250. 2011, about 226. Gas drilling is going on now, and it continues to go on. It's going on all over the state. The figure you see up there, all the red areas are where gas drilling is going on. The green is oil, and the black is gas storage fields. Okay, now, one of the things I'm going to do is quickly go through a typical well. I think Chris will probably do the same thing, unless he gets to skip it because I'm doing this. We're going to look at the drilling site, the horizontal drilling process, the drilling unit, the drilling pad, the number of wells on the pad, the sequence. All right, this is up in northern Shenango County. I just put this picture here to show you what happens when they come in and drill. All of the red dots on there you see are gas wells. This is a Google image taken in 2010. I'm going to show you the same area again. This is the same area in 2012. I put this on here just to tell you that if everything's done correctly and they come back in and repair the stuff, everything's done correctly, you'll find very little disturbance later on. There are still small well pads there, and those well pads will be there for 30 years. There's a farm just down the road from where I just took that last picture, and you can see up in the, I have a pointer here. You can see up here in the back, there's a gas well up in here, and cows are grazing around it. They've done a nice job of reclaiming the land here. It's a very good site. And right next door, and right next to those other cows, the cow standing out in the water. He seems to be doing okay. I threw this slide in here. This slide is the Carty well, which is 1.2 miles south of the state line, just below Conklin. We all know where Conklin is. And I threw this slide in there because we get the impression all the time that there's no gas drilling going on in our area. Well, there is gas drilling going on in our area. Believe it or not, if you go out there, this is the state line, you cannot find it. It's not there. It's just not there. But there's a gas well right there, 1.2 miles south of the thing. That gas well, that gas pad right there, one of the wells on it is giving out 8 million cubic feet of gas per day. 8 million cubic feet. It's right there. And just below this little line that comes up through here, that's the laser pipeline. The laser pipeline crosses the state line right over here at the southern end of the town of Windsor, the town that I live in. It goes up across the town, and it actually terminates at a compressor station on Dunbar Road, which is 2 miles up the road from where my mom's house is. All right, I'm going to get through this slide because I'm a drilling unit in New York State. These are under current regulations. These aren't new regulations that are coming out in the SGIS. Under current regulations, you can have a drilling pad for the Marcellus Shale as big as 640 acres. It can be smaller than that, but it can be as big as 640 acres. Put a drilling pad in the middle. I'm going to throw some wells, some laterals and some wells on it, and I'm going to skip most of this. And what I've done is I put 6 wells on this drilling pad over a 3-year period. And I put the 6 wells on because under current state regulations, once you start a drilling unit, you have to finish that drilling unit within 3 years. Not new regulations, existing regulations. You have to finish it. You have to do everything you're going to do. And it doesn't have to take 3 years. When I told the last time I visited a well site in Pennsylvania, the last time I was down there, they told me that they could drill a well in 16 days. Finished. So we're talking about, but you have to do it in 3 years. You must do it within 3 years. All right, here's a drilling site. Now I want you to take a look at this. This is a pretty good drilling site we visited down in PA. This is a good drilling site. It's got impermeable plastic underneath this. It's got locked together padding. They're doing all the work on top of that padding. Some things that you can't see around the outside of this drilling pad is a berm about 18 inches high that is designed to keep any spills that happen on this drilling pad. If it gets out from this pad, this right here, it's designed to keep everything on the pad. And one of the things that the landowners believe, we think that the stormwater plan and the spill containment plan are essentially important parts. The state's done a pretty good job on these things in their SGIS, and they've made it so that it's good. This is a drilling pad that we like. Over here is where the drilling cuttings come back, and this is for flaring off any gas that comes back with it. This is a closed loop drilling thing, and any liquids that come back as a result of hydraulic fracturing are caught in steel tanks. No pits. That's another thing that the landowners are pretty adamant about. No pits. No pits. So we're pretty good about that. Now I'm going to show you another drilling pad quickly. This is another drilling pad. It's a new drilling pad that's down near Lennox, and this is a different company doing it, and they have a little different viewpoint on it. They have this impermeable layer out here, which is good, and they've actually dropped the level of that about a foot below the surface here. A couple of things that we don't like about this really is around the outside of the pad, where the other pad had a berm, there's nothing here. So we don't think that this is quite up to snuff for what the landowners group want. We want better. We want better than this. Typical horizontal drilling thing, you'll see this again probably when Chris goes, but a horizontal bore can extend over 10,000 feet, goes into the shale bed to fracture and release the gas, and several horizontal bores can be made from a single pad. Now, one of the things that I said before is I've worked in over 32 states, and I've worked on gas fields out west where you can have the pads as close as every 18 acres. And one of the things that we said from day one is that, no, we can't do that in New York State. We cannot do that. The only way that you're going to keep down surface disturbance and pollution problems in New York State is if you have single pads, multiple wells, horizontal drilling. You have to keep down the surface disturbance. Less access roads, less chance to spill, less pipelines, everything works better that way. Protecting the aquifer. This is an important thing. State regulations require that wells be constructed to prevent movement of oil, gas, or water from one zone to the other. Each casing string reaches depths of cement is pumped down to the bottom and forced upwards to the surface around the pipe. The process ensures that an integral impermeable seal of cement and steel between the aquifer and the natural gas source. Really important. It's really important that this is done and it's done correctly. Now, here's another little thing that a lot of people don't know. You can find this in regulations. Just go dig through them. You can find it. New York State's a little different than every other state. It's a little different in this way. In New York State, if you're drilling a gas well and you hit shallow gas any place, shallow gas, you drill it. And believe me when I tell you, when they're drilling these gas wells, they always know when you hit shallow gas. They know every gas play that they hit as they're going through. That information is computerized and they can see it immediately. So when you hit shallow gas in New York State, you have to stop. You can't keep drilling. You have to stop. You have to fill the well. You have to call the DEC representatives in. The DEC representatives, engineers, and your engineers figure out how you're going to get past that shallow gas without polluting the freshwater aquifer. That's really important, number one. Number two that's really important in New York State, and this is something that a lot of the gas companies are against on a national level, when you actually seal, put in that cement on the surface casing that protects the aquifer, you have to wait till it cures. You can't keep drilling. In some states, you could pump the cement in, and you could be drilling a couple hours later. Not in New York State. You have to wait till it cures. Wait till it reaches 500 psi. That's important. Those are two things that make New York State very different from other states. All right, water contamination from hydraulic fracturing. And I'm not talking about methane regulation. I'm talking about actual water contamination from hydraulic fracturing. One of the things that we did, the Joint Landowners Coalition, we have a technical committee, and every time something comes up, we try to investigate it. There's a oil and gas compact commission which was formed by Congress back in, I believe, 1931. And they monitor everything that goes on oil and gas-wise throughout the United States, and have since 1931. We called every state that's in that compact commission that has natural gas development going on in their state, and we asked the resource agencies from that state two questions. Question one, has there been any contamination of drinking water aquifers in your state due to hydraulic fracture? Every state, none. Question two, are there any communities in your state that have unsafe drinking water due to natural gas? Every state, none. But this is interesting. We did that back in 2010. Since then, we've had a boom of natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania and other states. So we repeated the same thing again in 2010, in August of this year, and we got the same answers for both. And anybody in here who wants to Just get your name to me and everything. We actually have a handle, I don't have them with me. But I'll give you the names of everybody who called both times. You can call them yourself. Call them and ask them yourself. Don't take my word for it. Actually, I'm asking you not to take my word for anything. If you hear something that you want to find out more about, do it. Go find out more about it. Well, 10 minutes is good. All right, I'm basically going to run through a couple of quick things that I've done before, and then I have a lot more, but we'll get to that maybe in the question. One of these things that you always have to do when you're doing an environmental impact statement, I've written hundreds of them, you always have to address all impacts. Now remember, all impacts are not negative. People say, oh, it's got environmental impact. Well, maybe it's positive. One of the positive impacts for gas drilling is the ad valorem tax. And it's one of the things that the landowners are really, really passionate about retaining in New York State. But people will tell you there's no statewide tax in New York State on natural gas. And that's true. But there is an ad valorem tax. An ad valorem tax is a local tax. It's like the tax that you pay in your house. So in this particular case, you have to think of the gas thing as a 5-acre house, similar to a residence. And the private residence is owned by you, and the gas law is owned released by the gas company. An economic unit. The economic unit of gas site is the rights of all, you have the gas, equipment, fixtures on the same pipeline, compressor station, equipment storage buildings, all of the wells plus one well, or a group of wells, and a second that is an economic unit of production. The New York State Office, I'm going really fast through this, I know. The New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services, the Board of Colesville, puts together these units of production values. The board gathers information on the well data, royalties, gross income, expenses. Data is analyzed and normalized, and they come up with a unit of production value. And that's calculated for the new tax year and distributed to local assessors. And here's what happens. You get the standard royalty, you get the sale price of the gas, minus the standard royalty, which is what the landowner might get, minus overriding royalties is what the landman might get. That equals your gross operating income. From that, you subtract your operating expenses, reserve, dry hole, any kind of normal business things. That gives you a net cash flow, and from that, that is divided by the discount rate. The discount rate is an interesting number. The discount rate is the 5-year average of the federal, 5-year monthly average of the Federal Reserve rate plus 0.175. The 0.175 is always constant, but as we know right now, the Federal Reserve rate really couldn't be lower. So if you even have a small number, like the sale price of gas, we know gas is cheap now, it's like $3 per 1,000 cubic feet. But if you're dividing it by a little teeny number also, you still end up with a pretty good number. So the tax rate, the unit of production value, is what comes out of it. All right. Now, the unit of production value has one more thing on it. They don't just come up with, here's last year's unit of production value. In order to make it easy for the assessors, what they do is they average it over 5 consecutive years. Because it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. The assessor would be dead without being able to have the average over 5 years. But they go back 6 years and come forward 5 to do this. So if you go back, the taxes for the unit of production value in 2012 are based on the 2006 unit of production value, 2007, 8, 9, and 10. You can see that they're all over the place. And that's divided by 5. And so for 2012, the unit of production value is $9.80 per 1,000 cubic feet. That's the assessed value per 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas, even though natural gas is only selling for free. One other quick thing I throw in here, but I'm going to get to something. This is the decline curve from the SGI. I was in Chapter 6. You can get the same information. The DEC says that the average Marcellus well is about 803 million cubic feet per day. It'll decline to 354 second year, and then it goes out to around 100. It'll go like that for maybe 20 or 30 years. All right, so you assess the gas well. Yeah.
I dispute that graph.
Yeah.
That graph I dispute. Please look at a guy named Mark Berman, right? You said you like to look things up. Please do that. I disagree with DEC.
Can we wait until he's gone before we open this off, please?
The reason I don't actually believe this graph either, but this is, in order to sell an argument, this comes from the DEC. I didn't make this graph up. All right, so the local assessor gets the unit of production value, $9.80. 803 million cubic feet per day, take off 3 because of the rates per 1,000 cubic feet, take off 3, 803 units, times the equalization rate. In this particular case, I use 69.5, which happens to be the equalization rate for the town of Conklin. And that assesses one gas well. The first year would be assessed at $5,469,233, and that would be taxed. And that would be, they would get a tax bill from the town. And that's just for one gas well. Now, what I did, and now I said that, remember the figure I had before saying you have to do 6 wells and finish the whole thing within 3 years? Well, I did that. What I did here is I put the 2 wells on in year 1 at the 803 million cubic feet per day. And I went through and I calculated the tax that would be generated in the town of Conklin. County services would get $103,000, and you can read these as well as I can. And you come down through here, and the school taxes would be almost $402,000 for a total of around $594,000 on the 2 gas wells that are done the first year. Then you go to year 2, and in year 2 what I did is I decayed that curve. I followed that decay curve. I took 2 new wells at the high production, 2 wells at the second year production. And I went through the same exercise again. $163,000 to the county, and all this other money to the town, and $579,000 to the school. Then I went to the 3rd year. Now our pad is completed in 3 years. At the 3rd year, you got $200,000 to the county, $708,000 to the school district, for a grand total of around $1 million. This is the amount of ad valorem tax, local tax, not tax to the state, not going away. This is huge. This is huge. And that's only 1 square mile. And people in the town of Conklin understand that this gas well right here is only 1 mile from their town. And they lost all kinds of properties in the last flood. They would like to have that tax with them. Here's another quick issue. The Dunbar compressor station, which is up the road, as I said before, from my mother. The Dunbar compressor station is at the end of the laser pipeline, the northern end of it, and the Millennium pipeline is right up in here someplace. And then what it does, it brings the gas up from Pennsylvania along the laser pipeline into the Millennium pipeline. This is an overhead view of it. The Dunbar compressor station is right there. Dunbar Road, Patterson Road. They bought, when they were doing the pipeline, they bought 50-some acres in here, and they added another 20 or so after that, and built the compressor station there, and the pipeline comes into it. The interesting thing about the Dunbar compressor station, and these are some interesting things to think about, is that one of the things that we did in the town of Windsor, and this information is available online, is we put in a noise ordinance. We put in a noise ordinance. The reason we put in a noise ordinance, a local noise ordinance, is because if you don't have a local noise ordinance, the Public Service Commission will typically go by the same noise level that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission allows on their pipelines, and that's a maximum of 55 decibels or 10 decibels over ambient. Our noise ordinance is 5 decibels over ambient, period. The company that put this in agreed to it. Is it at that level now? No, not quite. But they're still working on it, and they're making some changes and upgrading it and making it better. It's not at that level yet. 1 minute I got left. I'm going to do one last thing, or 2 last things. Property taxes paid to the town, county, and school district on the Dunbar compressor station and pipeline. This is the full value assessment of the Dunbar compressor station, $38 million, and the 9.5 miles of pipeline that are in the town of Windsor. The assessed value of $26 million. The county gets every year $268,000. The town gets $101,800. The school district gets $686,399, or $1 million a year taxes based on those 2, the pipeline and compressor station. And some people in the town of Colesville probably live in the Windsor School District. Or anybody here lives in the Windsor School District? Your property taxes went down, but your school taxes went down, didn't they? My school taxes went down. Our school budget went up 3.5%. Our school budget went up 3.5%. But overall, throughout the school district, our property tax, our school taxes went down 8%. I think that we're probably the only people in the area who has that, who can say. That's a good thing. I got one last thing, give me one more minute. One more minute, or else it's gonna drag me out. Oh, the other thing that's happened, the other, actually two things, you get 25 minutes. 25. All right, I'm killing you now. One of the things that our town board just did, and our village board, is we just passed franchises, gave franchises to allow natural gas to the village from that same pipeline that's going through the laser pipeline, Corning Natural Gas in Leatherstocking, are planning to install natural gas to the village. Natural gas, once installed, according to our school superintendent, will save our school district $250,000 per year, and, this is important to me, will reduce our emissions. That's really important to me. Initially, there will be 112 houses, 2 schools, 1 bus route, and 24 businesses on the route. I did another quick calculation for your benefit. The average amount of fuel oil, according to Rochester Gas and Electric, used in New York State, is 822 gallons per year if you're burning fuel oil. Cost per gallon for 2000, the cap price, I called a couple of companies and got this, $3.86. Annual cost would be over $3,000. Natural gas equivalent, we're going to jump right down here. Natural gas equivalent for the same thing would be $1,026. The estimated savings per household is $2,000 a year times 136 residents and or businesses on the line. That's $291,000. If you take that $291,000 and you add to it the $250,000 that the school's talking about, you're talking about the people in that area, in the village, in the school district, that would be you guys too, we'll be saving close to $500,000, over $500,000 a year. That's a big deal. All right, I got lots more, but the rest.
Bob, before you sit down, I have one question for you.
Sure.
Most of these people do fracking. The effects of fracking.
Yes.
Are you in favor of fracking?
The one slide I put up there does more than, it says more than anything else. And I'm in favor of fracking. Fracking is a technique that's used, and when I said we called all 21 states to actually allow hydrofracking, and they all said they never had a problem with hydrofracking contaminating any water aquifers, any place. I've worked in this field for over 40 years, and I work with the regulatory agencies all the time, and I know it's difficult to distribute. It's easy to distrust government, but either they're all lying, or they're telling the truth.
So what's the answer to the question? Your question was, are you for it?
Do I believe in
Are
hydrofracking?
you for it?
I think hydrofracking is fine. They've been hydrofracking in New York State since 1950, and they're still hydrofracking. You don't think they are, but they're still hydrofracking in New York
But
State.
we're talking horizontal, not hydrofracking. There's a difference between hydrofracking you're talking about and horizontal hydrofracking. They are not the same thing.
That's why we went back and called them all back again this year. It's
Well,
because there's more. But the
New York State
horizontal,
doesn't have horizontal hydrofracking.
That's
Bob,
right.
why don't we,
Yeah.
we're going to come back to that, but why don't we give Chris his due?
Yep.
Thanks.
We're not quite ready yet, so if you want to.
We'll get back to that.
Okay, first off, I'd like to thank the board for having me, and Bob, actually. Bob and I have known each other for a good many years, and we were just commenting as we were walking over here, that there really hasn't been that much opportunity for two people to dialogue over this as opposed to one side versus the other. So really appreciative of the opportunity. I too was why am I going forward? Okay. I'm going to go through slides pretty quick too. But one big picture point that I always like to try to make is when we burn fossil fuels, we're basically reversing a process that took eons to create these fossil fuels, and in a relatively short geological time, we are burning fossil fuels at a rate that basically is not destroying the planet, but evolving the planet. It's sending all that carbon that was sequestered over millions and millions of years back up into the atmosphere. You may have noticed, too, that as we've gone through our fossil fuel reserves, it's just been getting tougher and tougher to get at. And we're now not in danger of so much running out, but just the fact that we have to bring more intensive, more risky, more destructive technologies to bear to get at increasingly harder to get at fossil fuels. And actually, if you look at it, and actually, ironically, it takes more energy to get the energy. And then actually the curve is looking more like this. So this is the path that's we're going, and there's no getting off this path of just having to do more and more to get less and less, and being more destructive in the process. Certainly we know that coal is following that route, oil, and natural gas is not exempt. We used to be able to get natural gas, and we still do to a certain extent, through conventional methods. That's when you find a reservoir, pocket of gas, you shoot down into it, pull it out. It's a lot of what the gas wells that Bob was referring to earlier. That's how we used to get gas. But now, as those are becoming depleted, we have to turn to this more unconventional gas drilling. You have to go into those tight shales, and that's a completely different animal. There's been a classic bait and switch going on here, folks, where the industry has been going on and on about this clean green fuel, and everybody has this old picture of how we used to get fuel. Yet, as more and more people are finding out, that's not really what they're talking about. They're talking about this unconventional hydrofracking, which is, like I say, a completely different animal. It used to be considered uneconomical and impractical until the industry, and this technology has been around for quite some time, but considered uneconomical and impractical until the industry got quite a number of exemptions from some pretty significant environmental regulations that basically got them out from some liabilities, got them out from responsibilities. So now magically it's economical to move forward. So this is the deposit that we're talking about in New York State. Most of you know now that we are targeted for this stuff. Some of us refer to it as sacrifice zone, unofficially, of course, because officially we're supposed to be all equally protected. In other words, you're supposed to be protected just as much as a person from New York City, yet that's being exempted as well. We're being targeted. 5 counties have been singled out to get this, have this activity take place. So, extraction from natural gas. Bob went through some slides. I'll do it too quickly. First thing people notice when gas drilling comes to town is the truck traffic and noise and fumes and road destruction that comes along with it. You may have noticed, read in the paper not too long ago, the press interviewing people from down in PA. Nothing can prepare you for the onslaught. Driving 4.5 miles can take 45 minutes. And it's not surprising. This is an inventory taken directly from the environmental impact statement of the trucks. A lot of trucks. And you start doing the math, and you can see why trucks might be a problem. It feels like an invasion. It feels like an occupation. And these are big equipment trucks, and that's one of the first things we find, that our roads aren't built for this type of equipment. That's actually a bulldozer towing that piece of equipment, that truck carrying that equipment, and the wide loads, and that's the other thing. A lot of our roads aren't very wide. How would you like to run across this truck in the middle of winter as you're driving down the road? So again, the Department of Transportation has actually done the calculation of what this would cost to repair, and the towns simply aren't repaired. I have a town in my neck of the woods that actually considered and passed a road ordinance that required $250,000 bonding from the companies to take care of their roads. And that doesn't even come close to what would be required. A lot of these towns, I'm sure this town is a lot different because they do their homework, but I mean, a lot of towns, they don't know, they're clueless of what's coming down at them. They're like deer in the headlights. We've noticed as this process started out west but has moved eastward, and we've noticed in the process that there's a lot more disturbance of the terrain. A lot of flat area out west, a lot of hills here. So you get to see, they have to create a 3 to 10 acre site of which to operate. And these sites are just getting bigger and bigger all the time. So there's a lot of cut and fill operations going on, and they just do what needs to be done to make that happen. I have this to show yet another cut and fill, but also a bunch of trucks queued up to get on there, and all the diesel fumes that would come along with that. Bob mentioned they're phasing out of pits, which are basically holes in the ground lined with plastic. It's good to see some landowner groups. Bad idea, exactly. But the DEC actually does not disallow this. They'll disallow it in flood zones, but not everywhere. They are going, a lot of places are going to these tanks, but even if you notice, even there's not a lot of controls over the volatiles that would be coming off of the stuff coming up out of the ground. So drilling a well, Bob covered this as well, and I encourage anybody to go to an industry site to check this out. This is what you'll typically see, is all this strata neatly stratified, if you will. What they don't show you is the fact that, and most geologists, any geologist outside the pay of the industry will tell you that our strata doesn't look like that. Our area in particular has gone through a lot of, over geologic time, it's gone through a lot of uneven uplift. So we have a lot of fractures in that strata. The industry likes to say there's no communication between those stratas. Well, there's a lot of communication going on. What's locking things down there is it's locked in the shale itself. And this whole operation is all about fracturing that shale to liberate the gas, of course, but there's a lot of other stuff that you'd much rather keep down there, toxic compounds, heavy metals, and the like, that are also mobilized by the same process. So here's a pit or tank, and the drilling operation, as Bill pointed out. They do go through a casement of when they shoot through aquifers. And they found that, especially as they've gotten into this high pressure fracking process, that they've had to increase those casings because the single casings just don't stand up. So they've doubled, tripled these casings to go down. They don't they don't purposely mess up the aquifer. Why would they do that? They do try to protect the aquifer. The problem is, as they've increased the circumference of these casings, that all the problems typically occur on that outside casing. And so by increasing the number of casements actually has increased the surface where the problems typically occur. Industry, both independent and industry data point to a 5% failure rate in the first year, 60% failure rate over 30 years, and again, as they actually try to face, it's a conundrum for them really, because as they've tried to increase those casings, they've actually increased the failure rate at the same time, for all the reasons why I explained. So that's what they're experiencing down in PA. Afterwards, so the casing, as Bob pointed out, is a very crucial part of the process. After they go through that, they go down pretty traditionally, but then go out horizontally. Bob already went through all that. So you have a drilling operation. Bob did all that. We'll just zip right through that. Hydrofracking the well. They start with kind of mini explosions, really, to perforate the pipe and start the fracturing, and then they put a manifold at the top and pump a mixture of water, granular material, usually sand, and this chemical mix to do the hydrofracking under extremely high pressure. So then you get all the water trucks coming in, right? And the pumping out of the water from your streams and the like. And here's the chemicals. And this is where they purposely, I told you that they don't purposely pollute aquifers. Well, they purposely pollute the water going into the fracking process, of course. And there's a lot of chemicals that's brought in. So this is compressors, and here you get a lot of noise. No getting around it, compared to jet engine going 24/7. So if you thought the noise was unbearable through the first part of the process, you certainly won't like it when they frack. Afterwards, or while they're fracking, then becomes a flowback or flaring period. Only about 20% of it comes back out. That's yet another problem. You'd like to have 100% coming out so you could deal with it, right? But as the process has moved eastward, they're finding those recovery rates being less and less. So there's a lot that kind of stays down there only to come back to bite you later. Actually, they flare quite a bit of gas right at the beginning. Gas that's actually not paid for by the gas company. That's your gas being flared, by the way. And then both Bob and I have mentioned how they're going to these mega sites. More and more well pads on a single, wells on a single pad. So it all goes 24/7. Living near a site might not be to your liking. Here's a shot that I took off of a person's back porch and down in PA. That's their property line. So the setbacks, you say, oh, it's going to be 100 feet, 150 feet setback. Well, that's not going to feel very far if you're actually living next to it. And it could be that this person might have been compulsory integrated. I'll get to that in a minute. And it's probably, and the lease owner is way over. So who's getting the brunt of this activity? It's the poor person right next to the well. Now, it is true that after they finish all this, it is cleaned. The site is cleaned up. It drops down to about 4 acres, and you're left with wellhead, compressors, separators, and storage tanks. It is something that all those pieces of equipment go 24/7, so it is something you're living with for a good long time. And as Bob and I both pointed out, they're actually putting more wells together So these things that you're living with for a good long time are just getting more and more, running 24/7. Okay, so all that I've described thus far is for a single well. And the problem here is no well site is an island. From a community standpoint, we're not dealing with a single well site, we're dealing with a gas field. That's an individual well site multiplied thousands of times. And it is an industrial activity by definition. The whole area is basically declared an industrial zone, and the industry is insisting that they are exempt from local land use planning and zoning laws. Some of the towns are fighting that, but this is the industry's position. That they're exempted from those laws along with all those other laws. So you have a well pad. I'll use 6 just as an example. So basically, you've compromised you've drilled through the aquifer 6 times for each of these pads. Creates that spacing unit that Bob referred to. What's interesting is, and I'll just zip through here, is this whole concept of compulsory integration. That's all about, when 60% of the acreage around you is leased, you can be forced into a spacing unit. That means a landowner that owns, so that's not people, that's all determined, it's not 60% of the people, it's 60% of the land. So one landowner owning 384 acres could force a neighbor owning 256 acres into a spacing unit against their will. And you just start doing the math. Obviously a lot of people don't own 240. They might own an acre. And in those scenarios, of course, you have 1 acre basically dictating for 256 owners. Now they can't drill on your property, but they can sure as enough build right next to it, as I showed you in that at that other slide. So the plan is to basically divide up our area into these spacing units. About 9,000 wells are predicted for Broome County. What do you get in addition to those all that well activity that I described earlier? You get a network. All these well pads have to be connected to gather that gas. And so a gas field has this, the countryside is then laced with miles of connecting piping. And here, all have to be kept clear through the life of the project. And the land here can be taken by eminent domain. And they go where it's dictated, where the sites are dictate the best route. Okay, and then in addition to that, you get bigger compressor stations. And again, these booster stations run 24/7. So that's something else that you're living with over time. So you start building out a gas field, a single well site goes to this, and then once the countryside is industrialized, then they'll go into the urban cores. If the pattern that played out west holds true east, so nobody's exempt from this. There's no place to hide. Okay, so actually, typically I like to lead, obviously people support gas drilling, against gas drilling, and conditionally support it, all aggravated by the fact that the costs and risks are relatively equally distributed while the benefits are unequally distributed. No wonder it's a contentious issue. And what saddens me is gas drilling hasn't even come yet, and it's already destroying the fabric of our community. And again, if Pennsylvania is any indication, it only gets worse. So, okay, I'm just going to zip right through this. Bob covered all the, where you'd be coming from if you were a supporter. Okay, opponents, typically preservationists, environmentalists, And landowners who bought property zoned residential thinking that they were protected have a big problem with this. And I want to zero in on this. There's some stories to tell, but we can't tell them. But I wanted to underscore this. People, like I said, they bought the property thinking that they were protected from this, and most people experience a loss of home equity. DEC calculates about a 22% loss on average, which if you have a lot of land, a lot of acres, and you get a lot of money from this, that'll obviously counterbalance that. But a lot of people with just a small, maybe an acre or a quarter of an acre, where all their equity is locked into their home, this becomes a real. You can understand why this would be a sore point for some people. And then certainly down in PA, some people are experiencing 80% devaluation, and people's life savings are, and their retirement strategy is all based on this equity buildup. So, and banks will not secure loans by property that's leased. You can't sell. You'd have a tough time selling because you might find a buyer out there, but they won't be able to get any mortgage for it, and insuring the property becomes problematic as well. So, okay, I have found, talking to a lot of people now, that most people get the fact that this is not good from an environmental standpoint, it's not good from a public health standpoint. I don't hear those arguments much anymore, but people are still getting tripped up by this whole, and the industry has sensed this, so that you see them shifting to this whole argument, oh, it's going to help your economy, right? So here's the deal there. There's basically two types of studies that are out there. One is comparative studies that compare communities that engage in drilling compared to those that do not. And then there's computer modeling studies that use computers and formulas to predict economic outcomes. So the comparative studies, almost to a study, will tell you that there's overall negative consequences and diminished future competitiveness from gas drilling activity. And if people just start to think about that, that should really make sense to them. Coming right up. So I guess, of course, the industry doesn't like this narrative, so what they typically do is roll out these computer models that predict all this job growth and overall positive consequences. The track record is not too good on those, so I'm not going to be able to go into it, but the job just isn't there. The jobs they're just a blip. Well, this, I guess, shows me my bias. The biggest sin, though, however, in these computer models is that they never look at negative consequences. And it's hard, really, to credibly state that there's an overall positive consequences when you don't even look at the overall consequences. And I guess I'm going to have to stop there. Thank you.
Chris, thank you very much. If I may, I'm just going to reiterate what Margaret said are the ground rules, just so we all know them. For the section here that are Town of Colesville residents, we're going to have the questions now, and you're welcome to raise your hand. I'll point so that we have some order as to who's going to ask the question, and we'll hand the mic to you. And one of the reasons we want to do that is so that everybody can hear the question, and hopefully our two speakers, wherever the question is directed to them, they'll repeat the question so that we can all hear it. What we'd like to do is one question per person. I know that's going to be difficult. It's going to want to be more of a dialogue or a debate, but if we could try to stick with the rule of a single question so that everybody gets to ask a question and get an answer to it, hopefully. And then, as we go through that, if if everybody's had an opportunity to ask a question, and there's still people that want to ask a question, by all means, in the center section, we'll go back around to people that have already asked a question so that we work our way all the way through that. The tendency is going to be, I know, to have somebody who then must chime in as they hear either the answer from the speaker or the question. And we're just going to have to ask you to be patient, and we'll go through the questions the way we have it as our parameters. I'm the town attorney in a number of different towns, and one of the reasons I enjoy the town of Colesville board meetings and the way they do things, and the residents, is everybody here is very respectful, no matter what the issue is. And I don't expect that it'll be any different tonight. And so, if you would, if we could just follow those rules, let somebody speak, even if you completely disagree with the question or the point that's being made or what the speaker has to say, please just let them do it. You'll get your turn to ask the question and make your point. But if we could follow those rules, that would be much appreciated. After those questions, then, as Margaret said, we're going to have a separate scenario where somebody can come up to the podium and speak for up to 2 minutes. But for now, it's the questions. If you would, when you get raise your hand, I'll point to you. If you'd stand up, use the mic, and ask the question to the particular speaker, that'd be appreciated. Thanks. Yes, the gentleman back there.
I'm Paul LeBlanc, I live here in Colesville. Does it work? I think so. Everybody hear me? My question is about the water that's necessary to really both speakers, necessary to be used to actually frack, because I understand it comes to the millions and millions of gallons when you add up the wells. And, you know, when I drive by the Shenango River and I'm looking at rocks, I'm wondering where we're going to get the water from. And then I just read about the drought in Texas, and in Texas, they had to limit water use because of their severe drought. So they limited residential water use. Then they limited commercial water use. Then they limited agricultural water use. The last restriction made on water use was for the fracking process stage. I guess it's a two-part question. The first part is, you know, I've read in the paper analysis about the average flow in our rivers, and we have more than enough, but I know that's an average. And it's not uncommon for me to drive down 88 and look at the Shenango River and see a lot of rocks. And I'm thinking, we're going to start pumping millions of gallons. Where does the water come from, aside from the problems of it after it's used? So how do you see that playing out in our area if that were to happen? So that's my question. Thank you. And I appreciate you being here.
I'll start.
It might be off.
Okay, I'll start. And then, one of the things I said before is that, and I said this, that I worked as an environmental consultant all over the place. And one of the things that happens that people don't actually realize, nobody actually realizes, that you actually think that the water that's on your property and stuff like that, that you're actually in control of. But in reality, the water that's on our property, that's in our ponds, that's flowing through the little streams on our thing, is actually regulated by the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. The Susquehanna River Basin Commission, if you wanted to sell the water in your pond to a gas company to do hydrofracking with, no. You got to get a permit to do that. You have to get a permit to do anything from the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. And they regulate it fairly well, and they know what the flow is, and if the flow gets low, like you say, they stop this. They stop it. If the flow will not sustain the river and allow for the people who actually have permits, towns, cities, golf courses, farms, whatever, to get water. There's no water to draw for hydrofracking. It stops. It stops right there. Just that quick. And then, if it comes back up, it does. And the other thing that always comes in, and the DEC is involved in this, is that they're on top of maintaining enough water in the stream to maintain the habitat for those creatures. So somebody's on top of
I can remember when I was a county legislator and we were in a drought period, and all of a sudden I was getting loads of phone calls. People's wells were going dry, and what gives? And there was this guy who had a pond, and he was filling his pond from his well. You know, I love Bob's optimism, but the fact of the matter is, I don't know of too much fracking activity that stops when we get into drought periods. Certainly, there are times when we have more than enough water than we have to deal with, right? But there are certainly other times when we can use all that we can get. And water is our most precious natural resource. It really is. We're blessed in this state with a lot of water. And to frivolously, to me, you know, there's a big difference, and this is another thing I hear from the gas companies. Oh, well, we're not going to use any more than it takes to water a golf course. Totally, well, they know the difference. This is water in a golf course. It stays within the water cycle. The water that's it's used in fracking, that's, like I said, purposely contaminated. And it basically takes that water out of the water cycle. So that's the difference.
Yes, gentleman here.
Thank you. Matt Goodness, Fruit Pound Road, town of Colesville. Bob, since you're a resident of the area, obviously you read the Binghamton Press and Sun Bulletin, and you saw the copy in this morning's paper regarding...
No, I was actually dealing with my mother.
Oh, well, there's a copy in the back that we can get one. It dealt with the issue of the inability of New York State to currently regulate and inspect sufficiently the number of wells that are currently involved in New York State. And you mentioned the number 9,000 wells within this 5-county district that they're planning on initiating fracking activity in. Can you please respond to that in terms of the ability of New York State to control the inspection and regulatory process?
I can, and I'll respond to you. Like I said before in the beginning, I happen to be on the advisory panel, the governor's advisory panel on this, and we talk about the 5-county thing, and I'll tell you that over a year ago, this is not anything that's been new to me. Over a year ago, the DEC was looking at the same area as the best potential for natural gas development. The reason they were looking for it is really quite simple. If you go a few miles south of us into Pennsylvania, the production down there is very good. So you come across the border up to here, and they're expecting it to be good. They're expecting that the agencies, not the agencies, but the companies that are interested in it will come to the areas that they think are best, and that just makes common sense. However, to get to your specific question, is the DEC's projections were 50 wells the first year that they issued permits. Now, the DEC can certainly regulate 50 wells. The second year, they're expecting a little over 100. The third year, about 225. The fourth year, about 300. Some. The fifth year, they might get up to 1,000. Now, the interesting thing is, and one of the things that, remember before I talked about the number of wells on the well pad? When I say 50 wells the first year, and then I say over 100 the second year, that isn't more well pads necessarily. That's more, we're going to drill more wells on those same pads because you have to complete it within 2 years. So we're talking about sending DEC personnel out to the different areas. And one of the things that landowners have always been really straightforward with the DEC on is we want to be sure you have enough personnel to do this. We want to be sure you have enough money. And the other thing we talk about on the advisory panel frequently is we talk about where is the funding coming from for put on this additional personnel. Well, I can give you a quick local rundown where I think some of the money should come from. The town of Sanford in 2008 leased out 50,000 acres at $2,411, which is over $120 million if you add it up. It's $124 million. Well, they paid $8 million plus in income tax on that. Nothing's been done with that money. I mean, that's in the state coffers somewhere. And I can go right down through just areas around here where groups of people have leased land. And in Root County, in Tioga County, I can come up with over $12 million that's already given to the state. So to me, the state says, where are we gonna get the money to put the additional personnel on? I tell you, they should be able to get the money from income taxes being paid by the landowners who have leased or are going to lease. And they should be able to get the income tax we're gonna pay on the royalties, which is gonna be 10 times as much as the income tax paid on the
I think this is an area where many of the landowner groups and environmentalists agree upon, that if we don't have regulation, we're in deep trouble, and inspection. So I think this is a common ground that we can come together on. I will say, well, I guess a couple of observations. Certainly, when they talk about economic development, and actually Bob identified, this money that comes in taxes, you'll be lucky if it covers the costs at the end of the day. So this is not additional money. Unlike a lot of other industry that it doesn't take a rocket science to understand how this would negatively affect other sectors of our economy, which is something I never got to in my talk, but I'll use the opportunity here. Even the DEC admits that this will negatively affect other sectors of our economy. So they don't quantify that, which is what you wish they would. And most other sectors, pay their taxes without a lot of expense to the community, whereas this particular activity brings a lot of expenses along with it. Expenses to the community.
Back here, I think you had your hand up.
I thought you'd be the first one. Hi, I'm Chuck Henderson. I live in Parkview in Colesville. Hi, Chris. Hey, Bob. My question is, what's the contingency plan? I mean, I bought my piece of property and built myself a nice little place out in the woods where it's nice and quiet and peaceful. And now they're going to put expect to put a drill well next to my house. Now, I've been on many of these sites, as you know, Chris, and I've set up a lot of these drill wells and rigs, and so I know exactly what's all going to happen. So what's the contingency plan on my standard of living in the house that I provided for my family and the lifestyle that I prefer to live in? I mean, there's going to be noise, there's going to be the truck traffic, there's going to be, devastation throughout the wildlife that we have around the house.
Contingency plan. There is no contingency plan. That's the problem. The issue is, certainly if you have a lot of acres, and I've gotten into conversations with some people who basically, they own a lot of land, and they say, I'd be crazy not to take this deal. If something goes wrong, I could pick up and move to another place. And well, that's their contingency plan. But for a community, that's a little difficult, isn't it? So, and again, if you're a smaller landowner where all your equity is locked into your home, then and you're not going to get much from this. So that's why a lot of people have a tough time with this issue. So yeah, I guess I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I think you had your hand up. Blue shirt.
Gordon Carroll, Colesville Road. You've made several assertions this evening that there's nothing but negative economic benefit that stems from this. We have a model that's been working.
No, I didn't say that.
No,
I don't think anybody said that. Go ahead.
You have a model that's been working, if not under a microscope, for 4+ years in Pennsylvania. I happen to know numerous people that live there. I know 3 people that have had public property, and I've done much investigation myself. I can give you numbers just like you can spend them out on the economic benefit in Montrose, even the nonprofits, plus the Montrose Library, all these things. But how can you stand there and say that land appreciation, property depreciation, attempt to buy property, attempt to buy a home in Pennsylvania, and you're standing there telling me that there's all these depreciations and all these negativity. Where are you coming up with these figures?
Well, first of all, I didn't say it was all negative. My big beef is, especially with the computer models that the industry tends to roll out, is they don't look at the negative at all. So you only see the positive, you don't see the negative. And I'm saying there are negatives. That 22% depreciation wasn't my figure. That came directly out of the SGIS, the environmental impact statement. And from people who live down in PA. If you go down in PA and talk to people, please take the industry tour. Definitely take the industry tour. But then talk to real people and see if it's a pretty picture from their standpoint.
I have a couple things to add to it, and I actually cheated because I actually went to a presentation that Chris gave last night and saw the things he was going to say. So based on what he did last night, I actually made a bunch of phone calls today. One of the things that he says is that you can't get a mortgage. I called 3 banks. I called Tioga Savings. I called People's Bank. I flashed before. I called Tioga, People's, Chemung Canal, and then M&T. I called those banks today, and I talked to either a vice president or someone who was in charge of investing. And I asked them questions about getting mortgages, and none of the people, especially the people at People's, were the most forthcoming, but they said, we don't have a problem with giving a mortgage out on a piece of property that has a gas lease on it, as long as we're first on that mortgage. But I bought property before, and I think many of you have these before too, and the banks always want to be first. And they always want, if you have a lease on it, they might want the lease tied up as future collateral too. But as long as they're in that position. Now, the problem with getting a lease might come if you already have leased your property. You already have a lease on it for the gas station. And you want to refinance or you want to sell it to someone else and they come and get a mortgage and the gas company refuses to take the second position. That could be the problem. And that's a real possibility. But if everything is the way that it's supposed to be, mortgages aren't a problem. The other thing I asked the fellow in investment is about property values in Pennsylvania. He said, well, let me tell you what I know about property values in Pennsylvania. He said, it used to be that you could come down here and buy almost any piece of land for $800 to $1,200 an acre. He said, now you're talking, if you can buy it for $10,000 to $12,000 an acre, you'd be lucky, if you can find it. That's not my word. It was Bill Lewis, Peter's Bank, you can call him yourself.
Lady down here.
Well, I'm on the double leverage, and I have an organic vegetable farm in Harpursville, in town of Harpursville. Here's my issue. If my next door neighbor has a well, and that well, or a gas well, and it pollutes my water well, who do I sue, the gas company or my neighbor?
That's a good question. It's a real good question. The situation you're going to have, this would become into liability and insurance requirements and stuff like that. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a liability lawyer at all. I'm an environmental guy. But I actually made some questions. And I'm going to go back to I'm going to just digress just a minute. One of the things that Chris was talking about before was compulsory integration. And there's some issues in compulsory integration. And I'm going to talk just a very brief part about the liability issues associated with compulsory integration. If you're forced into compulsory integration, because somebody else has 60% of the land and you contributed because they have to take your land and make it the size of the drilling unit, if you're forced into compulsory integration, you basically have 3 choices. You have 3 choices in the compulsory integration. One is to take the royalty interest. That means you don't do anything, you just get royalties on the gas based on your acreage percentage in the whole unit. That's it. If that happens, nothing happens on the surface, they can't drill there, no liability. You have no liability if you take the royalty interest. Now there are 2 other choices. One of the other choices is becoming a non-participating owner. And if you decide to become a non-participating owner, you don't get any royalties or anything until you've actually paid back 300% of the cost of drilling the well. Okay, you got to pay back 300%. At that particular time, you're an owner of a gas tank, and you're going to get 100% interest. Some people will take that non-participating ownership because they know in the future they'll get more royalties. However, there's a very good chance in this scenario that once you pay your 300% back, you have exactly the same liability as the gas company. So in that case, your neighbor, you could sue him and the gas company because they're actually one and the same. The third choice, of course, is being a participating owner. If you're a participating owner, you start right off the bat when you're compulsory integrated and tell the gas company, I want to be a participating owner, and the gas company will say, okay, it's going to cost us $1 million to do this. You own 1/5 of the land, pony up $200,000. You give them $200,000, and right from day one, you are participating owner. You are, in fact, part of the gas company then. So yeah, you'll have liability then, no question about it. No question at all about it. But your neighbor who has the gas well on his property, he should have a really good lease, because he needs a lease like the landowners put together that describe liability and who's actually liable in there. You can sue anybody that you want to in the United States. That's just our way of doing business. We sue anybody you want to. But if you have a good lease with the gas company, a good lease written by a good attorney, then you'll direct the liability to them. That doesn't mean you can't be sued, but the gas company will be responsible.
Answer that a couple of different ways, I guess. And I'm not an attorney either. We should have had Alan answer this. But you got me. So here's the deal with liability. It's my understanding if you sign a lease, you're party to the to what happens there, and under that scenario, you are technically liable. Now, of course, and that's obviously it's the gas company and the gas operation that actually caused the problem, right? By the history of the industry is anything happens, oh, it wasn't our fault, right? We see this time and time again, and their lawyers probably tell them to say that, actually. So at the end of the day, the landowner who has entered into the lease, I think actually has more exposure, simply because they don't have a lot of lawyers to back them up as much as the gas industry. Now, the other way I tackle that question is the fact, okay, so you have land, you have an occupation, that's your livelihood, that has now been destroyed, basically. And so, okay, you can turn to the neighbor who was a party and said, that brought this, that enabled this to come in. And certainly they should be held accountable to that to a certain extent. But the gas company, between the two parties, you're not going to have a lot to go after. The companies will fight you tooth and nail. It's going to be tough for you to get restitution. And even for and I'll take the opportunity to speak a little bit to the leases themselves, because I know a lot of landowners think that, oh, I'm just going to get a tight lease and get protected. But there again, I would submit anyway, that at the end of the day, something goes wrong, you as a landowner, even you as a landowner who signed the lease, wants to get that fixed, right? So you turn to the gas company, who was your friend when they came in, right? But at that point, they're the enemy. And again, the track record on the industry is deny, deny, deny. And if you get any satisfaction on that you can have the tightest lease in the world, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to go to court. And in court, you're outgunned. Even if you're part of a landowner group, you're outgunned. I harken back to the example of the fishing industry up in Alaska, who 20 more years, it's been more than 20 years since the Exxon Valdez, we all remember that. They're still waiting for restitution on the damages that the industry inflicted on their livelihood. And And they had to take it to court because, gas companies saying, no, we're not liable. But, and they won every court battle. But of course, the other thing that the industry has is the appeal process that can be dragged on forever. And of course, this is the other thing with when we start treating companies and corporations like people. You and I have a limited lifetime. They can draw this out forever. It's very rare that people get completely satisfied in these types of court battles.
Yes.
John Armstrong, Beartown Road. Mr. Berger, you seem to suggest that through eminent domain, the gas companies would be allowed to run gathering lines across our land. Would you answer that, please, if that is in fact what you're saying?
It's my understanding that the drill pads themselves are obviously, they come under B&C regulations. The gathering lines come under the Public Service Commission, and they have powers of eminent domain.
However, to this one definitely, and this played out in Laser Pipeline when we did our negotiations with the Laser Pipeline in Windsor Land Industry. The Public Service Commission does have powers of eminent domain under extreme circumstances. They don't like to exercise it. So if someone comes to you and they want to run a gathering line across your property, you can just say no. Okay, they won't do it. The Public Service Commission won't grant them eminent domain. They don't do it. To the best of my knowledge, they've never done it. So they just don't, it's not that they don't have the power, they just don't do it. They say, go back and talk to the landowners and work out your problem. Now, that's that. That's gathering. If we go to a FERC project, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and it's a big project like the Millennium Pipeline or something like that, they definitely have the power of eminent domain. And the public, and the difference between the state regulations and the federal regulations are really quite simple, but it's very complex. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has a procedure, and they have a schedule. They start off with somebody comes in and does a pre-filing thing and talks to the Public Service Commission, then they go to the pre-filing, they start making maps and putting the pipelines through, and then they write the resource reports. Everything's on schedule. And they're dealing with the landowners the whole time. If they get to a point and they can't get across my land or Chris's land or your land, the Public Service Commission allows the use of eminent domain, and it is...
But not for gathering lines.
Not for gathering lines. Public Service Commission is prohibited by Congress to regulate gathering lines.
Anybody in the middle section?
I belong to the whole thing. I am in the middle section.
You live in
I live, yeah. I just went to wrong section. Her first? That's it. I actually live in the middle. I moved to the middle section. Like, how's that? We just weren't looking at the outside. No, that's all right. Hi, Jason Bruno, I'm at 22 Parkview Drive. I apologize that I didn't sit in the middle section. I have a quick, I guess I posed this to both speakers. I've got several points I'd like to make, but I'll make one now. The first thing is, what is the big deal with waiting 2 or 3 years, given that the gas price is low? I don't think anyone would disagree that the issue is still controversial. There's still problems with the hydrofracking process. There's still problems with releases. There's problems with everything. And the more time that we spend or allowing Pennsylvania, let's say the situation in Pennsylvania to rear its head, what is the big deal with waiting a couple more years? And I would just say it's a minimum until the wellhead price goes back up again, and at least everyone can make more money. I'll leave it open there.
Okay, let me take a crack at this and then I'll throw it to Chris. The problem with waiting a couple of years isn't necessarily a problem of waiting a couple of years. It's actually what we waited for. It started from 4. And I have on my desk pinned up the DEC's original schedule to prepare this. Started in the fall, and
Hang on, I don't care how we word it. I could care less word it 100 years, okay?
are you asking a question or making a comment?
No, I'm making a comment. I don't
No,
care how
just-
much
Why don't we follow, let's follow the rules.
Yeah,
Let
okay,
him-
so he didn't answer, he's on this, right?
Breaking the rules.
I'm asking, no, I'm not, well, maybe I'll change the rules. But I'm just saying, just let's start over, who cares how
We're
long?
gonna follow the rules or you'll leave, one or the other. We're gonna follow the rules. They're gonna answer.
Thank you.
All right, back to what I was saying. There's a lot, we've gone 4 years through this process now, which is okay. It's not bad. Stuff is better now than it was then. And one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that if you go around the world, the best environmental regulations in the entire world are in the United States. And I'm a guy who believes in environmental regulations. They're in the United States, the best environmental regulations. And in the United States, the best environmental regulations are in New York State. The people in California might argue that point, but I believe they're in New York State. And one of the things that I know, I've done this for 40 years, and one of the things that I know for sure, if somebody starts a process, I don't care what it is, it could be commercial fishing, it could be hydrofracking. If a problem crops up, the regulations are going to change instantly. They're going to stop giving well permits, and the regulations change instantly. People think that once this process is done, and they release this document, that it's all over. It's not. They're going to continue looking at it, and if something happens, they'll change it. They change regulations. Regulations change all the time.
It's true that the New York State has the best environmental regulations in the world on some things, but not everything. And I would submit that it's not quite up to snuff in this case on gas drilling. Having said that, none of us know at the end of the day what this document is going to look like. We hope. We have a lot of hopes. And that's why I actually advise towns, you hope for the best, plan for the worst. I think I would say the vast majority of people in New York State want science to decide this. On both sides of this issue, they want science to decide this. I think I'm not naive. I would imagine some of those people say that because they think science is going to justify their preconceived notions. But I'll take the support anywhere I get it. And we certainly have a governor now that's saying that he wants science to decide this. Having said that, I know people on both sides of the coin that are very fearful that this is going to be a political decision. Now, of course, the pro-gas drillers, they're fearful that the other side has overwhelming numbers to push the politicians in their direction. And they have good reason to fear that. It seems like the longer this stretches out, more and more people are against gas drilling. I don't know, actually, quite frankly, too many people that gas drilling looks better the more they look at it. So, having said that, the other side, of course, is fearful that the anti-drilling side is fearful that they're dealing with an industry with more money than God, and that money is going to determine this. So I think both sides have good reasons to take the stand they are. Having said that, getting back to the original question of one of the things that have kind of undermined people's trust in DEC, there's a number of things. But one of the things was, I can remember early on, when the previous governor basically said that he was going to let the process go through. But we know that there were people, and I'm not going to name any names, but it was a former county executive And other people went up there and pressured the governor, and he then all of a sudden they issued a memo saying you will get the S-guys out by a draft out by such and such a date. I don't know any science that follows those predetermined timeline. When Cuomo came in, he was basically saying the same thing, yet he wasn't even a year into his term when he issued basically the same type of memo. So the other thing that we've noticed is a lot of us who are involved right from square one raised some issues, what we consider some pretty important issues that draft after draft still haven't been addressed. I think there's a lot of good things in that document. Most of the things that I have in my presentation came from that document, so it's a good document as far as it goes, but there's still a lot left undone. I come back to, if a person's house is leaking and they ask the contractor to fix it, and then 4 years later he still hasn't fixed it. Is it the homeowner's fault that it isn't fixed, or is it the contractor's fault?
And you had your hand up before.
Speak louder when it's not doing too well.
Hi, my name is Carol Martin, and I've lived in this town my entire life. First of all, I'd like to say that this is a huge topic, and I hate the fact that it's going to be just quickly done over and goodbye tonight. I really would like to see us continue this dialogue and learn more about it, because they were absolutely rushed. They had each 20 minutes each, and there's an awful lot to learn, and there's a lot of things on both sides that we could all learn from. Secondly, you said that even the gas industry admits that 7.2% fail immediately, gas wells. And then over the next 30 years, 60% of those gas wells fail. So what does that mean for the rest of us little peons that only have, an acre of land, and we got to live with this threat for the next 60 years that maybe my water's going to go bad, and the gas company's already packed up and moved on, and the big landowners made their money and they went to Florida. So who's going to protect me? And obviously I don't have any protection whatsoever right off the bat unless I have deep pockets like the gas company, because I can't sue them. I just have to, suck up my loss and leave, evidently.
Slit your wrist.
Yeah, slit my wrist. Yeah.
I don't want to be trying that. Well,
I'll start and I'll give it back to Chris. Because we have different viewpoints on this. The slide that he gave on the industry stuff on gas well failures and stuff like that, I'm going to make a suggestion, and it has to back to do with whether or not you trust what's going on with your own regulatory. I'm going to make a suggestion that you call either Brad Fields or Linda Collar in the Minerals Division and ask them what the failure rate of wells in New York State is. I'm telling you, New York State wells for protection is different, and it's been exercised different from forever. The last time that they had a documented gas migration issue in New York State was in 1996 in the town of Freeman. 1996 in the town of Freeman. And the DEC came in and required the gas company to repair that, and it was repaired within a week. So you need to actually talk to somebody about what's going on in New York State. I don't care. I live in New York State. I don't care what's going on in Colorado, or I don't care what's going on. That's not true, I do. But I care more about what's going on here.
I've been to Bradford County, and I've seen all of those water buffaloes next to beautiful homes.
Yeah.
And they either have to sign a non-disclosure or they don't get any water for the rest of their lives. Is that fair?
jokingly, and it's not really anything to joke about, but water buffaloes are the biggest growth industry down in PA. But, no, okay, getting back to this, he said, she said. The figures that I was quoting are both determined by independent and industry data. I don't think, I respectfully disagree with Bob on this point that you can't go back to the track record in New York, even though I would suggest that even that is, there's debate over that. But even a bigger issue than that is, this is a different animal than what we're, the gas drilling that has occurred previously, if you recall what I mentioned earlier, we used to get gas when we found pockets or reservoirs of gas and just drilled down and got it. Those are harder and harder to find. We are not talking about the same process here. So to compare the track record of the gas drilling that has, we don't have this type of gas drilling, that's what this whole debate is all about. So I don't think it's kosher to compare.
I don't think my question was answered, actually.
We do have to move on, if you don't mind. And
I do mind.
Gentleman here in the white hat had his hand up.
Hi, I have 50 acres in town of Colesville, and I'm concerned about my well, which is fine water coming out of it. And what concerns me is that we don't know, we don't have a sense of the power of these, when we say corporations, it's really individuals. I read just a year or so ago, the IRS put out information that the 400 wealthy, not 400 wealthiest, the 400 top earners in the country average $344 million a year. That's like striking the lottery almost every day of the year, $1 million a day. Now, those folks earn, when I say earn, that's a whole questionable term, but those folks obtain that money mostly from investments. How much of their investments, those 400 top earners in the country, are invested in this stuff, and how powerful are they? That's the beginning of the question. The rest of the question is, we're going to get, let's say we go along with this, we're going to get, when I say we're, landowners, the county, the villages and so on, are going to get so much money. How much are they going to get out of what we now own that belongs to us right now? How much are they going to get? Does anybody have that figure? We have figures on, taxes and all this stuff and how much we're going to get. Where is the figure on what they're going to get?
I don't think anybody knows for sure. I know it's kind of a slippery deal. I know already, like leases have been entered into, and those, and the landowner got a certain amount for that lease, and that lease has already been flipped. And so, does the landowner at that point get any more money? No, it's the guy who did the flipping. Same with actually gas out of the ground. When they calculate that, they can calculate it on, well, what's the going rate? But if they turn around, say they store that for a while and then sell it later on at a higher rate, does the landowner get that amount difference? No. So it's a very slippery deal. And you're right. I mean, this is like David and Goliath. The industry versus we're stronger together than we are divided, and that's why I'm a strong supporter of landowner groups. Because I tell anybody that I present to, if you own land, join a landowner group. You're more powerful together than divided. But by the same token, even together, it's a David and Goliath. And so.
Let me do somebody that hasn't asked a question before. Is there anybody, all three of you have asked before, so is there anybody else that hasn't? Yes, a lady up in the back.
My name's Sammy Johnson. I live on Pease Road in Harpursville. I want to know, what is the purpose of having all of these TV stars, music stars, rock stars, whatever, coming out, talking about fracking in our counties and our state? They don't live here. They don't have anything to do with this. And they're essentially, Yoko Ono's on the TV. She may live in New York City, but she's telling me what I can do with my property up here. I have a real problem with that. She's never lived here in my town. She doesn't drive my roads, but yet she's telling me what I should be doing. Now, a lot of these people have asked questions tonight. I don't think they've been answered correctly or answered at all. I know this is a very passionate issue. I know there are people on both sides asking questions, and they're asking about things that are very important. The environment is important. But when you're getting into the personal aspect, I think you're absolutely right. This needs to be a scientific answer. Everyone's opinions are not going to matter. And waiting, what's the point in waiting? You wait 3 years from now, we've waited 4 years. 3 years from now, they're going to say, we need another study. We need another study. And then it's never going to happen.
Ma'am, if you could just pose a question.
My question is, what is the purpose of having all of these people stepping forward, asking and talking about our area, and they don't live here?
Okay.
The consensus of the group up here is a quarter of public opinion.
The gentleman, yes, right there, he has an answer. Yes.
Hi, I'm Scott Colton, live on Route 79 in Harpursville. Chris, I know you both well. Chris, you stated this started out west with the fracking, and it's come east. Have the controls of the regulations as it come east tightened up? If it started out in Wyoming and they had problems and came further to the Midwest, they tightened up again? I think, I believe when it started in Pennsylvania, they had some issues. They tightened up the regulations. So I guess that's my questions. Since from the inception to now, it started out in the west and it's come east, have the regulations tightened up over the years?
They most certainly have, and actually that's why BRISC, which is one entity that I am a part of, we've been approached, as you might imagine, many, many times to support a ban. Okay. And we have steadfastly refused to support a ban. And it basically rests precisely on, I think, the premise of your question. To say that this could never be made safe, I think is, it's hard for us to basically make that blanket statement. Now, having said that, if you're asking me if I'm convinced at this juncture, with all those improvements thus far, I will say I'm not convinced yet. This is probably where Bob and I might disagree, I don't know. But the other thing I think we should keep in mind is, I know the industry gets painted as the bad guy a lot, but I think we should have the integrity and honesty with ourselves to at least entertain the possibility that these guys are doing the best they can. And it may be that the technology just isn't up to snuff yet to deal with what they're trying to do with it. Is that to say that it'll never be that safe? No.
Well, nothing's ever 100%.
Right. And I guess that's another thing that it comes down to is how much risk are you willing to take. I see that being played out in the debate too. Some people are less risk tolerant than others.
Scott, just a thing, yes, he's right. The technology has improved, it's improved greatly. If you start out west and you go out west 10, 12, 15 years ago, you'll see drilling being done. What they do is they used to bring the waste material up from the drilling process, and they put it in the pits. And we're not talking about lined pits. We're just talking about pits. And what it would do, it would just sit there until everything evaporated off. And when it got done evaporated,
That was their answer to the waste.
when it got evaporated off, and you could do this in dry climates. You could do this in the dry climate, evaporate it off. Then they'd come in with a bulldozer and they'd fill the pit in. Everything was, the pit was in, and everything that was in that waste in there was still a few feet underground or on top of the ground, whatever, wherever it was there. In the last 4 years, since it's come east and it's come, and even in Texas and down in Louisiana also, they've changed a great deal. I mean, their procedures got much, much, much better. And one of the things that the landowners group has done, and we'll take some credit for this, we put together in the last comment period after you had to submit your comments in, instead of sending in 10,000, we estimate we have 70,000 people in the group. Instead of sending in 70,000 different things, we sent one 28-page document that we got together, committee after committee after committee, and we said, what do we like? What don't we like in this document? And what do we think needs to be added? We sent a 28-page document in, which I hand-delivered to the DEC, and said, I got boxes of letters here signed. You don't have to look at them. This is it. Look at this one document. And we actually haven't, we don't know about the same thing either, because we haven't seen the final document yet. When the final document comes out, the landowners groups themselves will evaluate whether or not our suggestions are part of it or not. I mean, and that'll be an increase. But yes, things have improved greatly, and we expect them to improve more.
Seeing hands, is there anybody else that hasn't asked a question in the center section that wants to ask a question? Yes, the lady up in the back.
Yes, I'm wondering, a couple years ago, we heard about this gel that was going to be such a big answer in the drilling process.
I'm having trouble hearing it. You gotta speak louder to that one.
Put it close to your mouth.
A fracking gel was proposed a couple years ago. I haven't heard anything more about that. It was supposed to be the big answer in the water usage. Have you heard anything more about this gel?
The gel propane?
I know a little bit about this, only because one of the landowner groups that I worked with is Tioga County, and they were trying to bring this into New York State. And the gel process you use is gas frac, and it's fracturing the rock with propane instead of fracturing it with water. Propane is kind of interesting, and it hasn't taken off in the industry for a couple of reasons. The primary reason is gas frac's a small company. You're a small company, and actually in some areas it works good. I'm not sure how it works in the Marcellus because it has only limited testing here. But the advantage of it from what I went to a seminar about gas frac, and the advantage to it from what the gas frac people tell me is, first off, instead of having hundreds of trucks going in with the propane, you end up with about 30 trucks going in to do the fracturing. So that cuts back on the truck traffic. The other thing that's kind of interesting about it is that when they gel the propane and they put it into the ground, they actually have to put another thing in after it's ungel, and the thing that they use to ungel it is sodium bicarbonate. And they put sodium bicarbonate in, and all of the propane comes back up with the natural gas, and there's no liquid coming up at all. It's just the propane. So it has some benefits, and it's being studied. And one of the things that the SGIS asks for are alternative methods to do these kinds of things. And this is one of the ones that I'm sure it will be evaluated. And it'll get used someplace. It'll get used someplace in New York or Pennsylvania where it needs to be done.
Just in a generic way, this is why I myself can't bring myself to say, let's ban gas drilling outright, because you never know what's on the horizon. It could be just such a thing. Having said that, I mean, I could list some issues that with gas fracking as well, but to say the jury is still out on that is actually overstating it. The court hasn't even convened to assess it yet. So it's something to keep an eye on. I will use the opportunity, though, to say, and this harkens back to when the industry for a long time has been saying, "Oh, we'll come up with a clean frac fluid." Okay? And my response to that was, you could have the cleanest frac fluid in the world, and that only solves half the problem. Because what you're dealing with, not only the flow back from that has obviously all the chemicals that well, not all the chemicals, that's one of the problems. They only have a small recovery rate at this point in time. Hopefully it'll improve, but we're not experiencing that presently. But bottom line is there's a lot of other stuff down there that you got to deal with no matter what. Naturally occurring stuff that you just as soon have it stay down there. But the fracking, obviously designed to liberate gas, but it liberates a whole lot of other stuff.
Anybody else in the center section that hasn't asked a question yet? Yes, the gentleman here now.
I don't need a mic. Forgive me if I missed, this was answered already, but how many gallons of water per well of fresh water is used for one well? Approximately.
Bob was saying 3 to 5, I prefer 3 to 8. A lot of water.
3 to 8 million gallons.
Million
And
gallons.
so now, is that water, with all our technology, because I know the outer space people could drink their pig, but can they make that water fresh again?
That's a big debate, number one. But number two, I keep on coming back to, ideally, in a closed loop process, you want 100% recovery rate, because then it's all right there so you can deal with it as imperfectly as you may. But the recovery rates that they're experiencing, and maybe Rob knows different, but I'm hearing like 10 to 20% recovery rate. That's 20% recovery rate. So you can have 100% dealing with the stuff that comes up, but you still have 80% that's still down there.
Yes. And there will be a time to speak on the pulp, because I know we only have one question to ask.
Let me speak to that, if you may. I'll speak to it if you want to just sit down for a second. We clearly have gone beyond the 9 o'clock, which was the deadline that Margaret talked about. I was trying to make sure anybody that hadn't asked a question got an opportunity. I'm not sure about the feeling if we can go to 9:15, do a few more questions of some that have a second question. But I really would like to make sure everybody that has a question that hasn't raised their hand before gets it. Have you asked before?
No.
Yes, then maybe you could ask your question, and then we'll see where we stand.
The question that I had was, you had mentioned earlier that there were no cases of water contamination due to fracking. Yet there was an EPA study from 1991 where they reported case after case in state after state of groundwater contamination due to oil and gas extraction, and also due to water withdrawals, mass water withdrawals. So I'm just wondering, is this just like semantics? You know, I mean, I hear this all the time, and yet there's government documents stating that, you know, whether it's drilling or fracking, I mean, you can't frack a well without drilling it first. The spills don't just happen, you know, if you're not doing these. Like I said, you can't frack well unless you drill it first, whether it's the drilling or the fracking or the spills that happen from the brine that's coming up. As a result, either way, if you weren't doing the oil and gas drilling or fracking, this wouldn't be happening. And it's really a disgrace that the people are being led to believe that this contamination is not happening. And right up in, there was the article that came out today, Walter Hang's article, and also, I've talked to people up in North Brookfield where they've had major problems with their water, and this happened quite some time ago. The DEC really did nothing to help them. They couldn't get a lawyer to take their case because they didn't have enough money to get the interest of any of the lawyers. And I think, I just think it's really appalling that people are being led to believe that the DEC is protecting us, and that it's just really is not the case. Especially when we've got...
Can you pose your question, please?
Well, that right there, the question about the water. I mean, I just don't understand how you can say that there's no cases of contamination.
Yeah, I think the industry did a real disservice to the community and really a disservice to themselves. You all remember back at the beginning of this, we've drilled a gazillion wells and haven't had a single problem. And they know different. And I think you've kind of latched on one of the issues is the semantics, the tight semantics that they play when in dealing with this. People know this generally as fracking, and they understand it as the whole thing. Well, the industry sees it very differently. They see a very tight framework, and if you can't prove that something happened within that very tight framework, well then there's no problem with fracking. Now, I actually saw a presentation given to the gas industry by some PR people. And it was very interesting. They said, guys, you've got to stop doing this. Every time you say this, your credibility just goes down a couple of notches. So, and I think you've seen the industry. There's some people that still haven't got the memo, and you'll still hear on occasion, there's no problems. But the gas industry generally has moved away from that message, and that's why because they know better.
Yeah, well, anyway, let me just address that just briefly, is that the gas and oil industry has had problems for years and years and years. If you go into East Texas is a mess. I mean, it has been for years, since the oil industry was there. It's a mess. But it's not a mess as a result of the process that we're talking about. Everybody labels hydrofracking as the issue. The issues are much simpler than that, but for years and years and years weren't really contained. I don't know if you see some of these movies that are like, remember Left to Be Blood, the movie Left to Be Blood? And they show these oil wells coming out, gushing oil all over the place, and the oil would be gushing out for weeks before they were able to contain it. Well, that's the early part of the oil industry and the gas industry alike. They don't do that anymore. But they did. I mean, they're not, that doesn't mean that at that time they weren't polluting water and everything. But as Chris said before, things get better, things change. And hopefully we can monitor them. We, people, the DEC, everybody can actually monitor and prevent some of that kind of stuff. That's why you have to have things in place. You must have things in place that are really good and well structured. Like I say, the things that matter to me the most, because I've been on a zillion sites, are the stormwater plan and spill containment plan. If those things are well developed and well staffed, then you'll stop 90% of the problems. Will you stop every problem? No. Accidents will still happen. Spills will still happen.
The consensus up here is that it would not be fair to try and pick and choose the number of hands that are having a second question, and we're really headed towards the 9:15. So some of you may have a quick question after we end. I think we're going to have to end for tonight. You're welcome to catch the speakers, but I think we have to be out of here at the last point of 9:30. So is that right, Margaret? So if you can catch the speakers, I know we didn't get through everything that we wanted to. I want to thank everybody for the respectful attitude they had. It was very good. As this lady said, we just didn't get through everything that we could. But again, thank you for your respect tonight.
Will there be another meeting?
The board will have to decide that.
Will this be posted online?
Everybody vote! Really? It's the only chance we had, vote!
Can I say something? I just wanted to say, you guys, I don't know if there's a good place to go, but we have people here tonight from PA who are experiencing the gas drilling boom firsthand, who weren't given an opportunity to speak tonight. So they came all this way. I don't know.
Vote these suckers out.
What?
The only thing we can do is vote these suckers out.
Well, that's not going to happen tonight.
Got the real stories right here, folks.
Chuck, is there a place